Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Arsenal transfer show, our daily show at 8 a.m. every single day. This is episode 19, I think. I wrote it, so I should know. 19, I think it is. So if you've ever questioned the commitment of this show, 19 days in a row so far. If this is your first one, where have you been? Second of all, welcome. And I hope that you tune in for the ones that are going to be coming up throughout the rest of the summer window. This is the show in which we update you for all the latest Arsenal transfer news. Sometimes can give you some little snippets of info that sneak down the line over my side of things, and of course update you and have the discussion in the chat box about Arsenal's latest transfer information. Yesterday we sat down for an hour at 5 o'clock and we talked about all host of things on the Let's Talk Arsenal show. So if you're into that sort of Q&A vibe, that came on yesterday, so make sure you check that one out. But for today, we've got lots of stuff that we need to talk about. Of course, it is a Saturday, and usually there's football, but I don't think there's any football today. I think I'm right in saying that. I think all the football is tomorrow, because they usually play the games like on the last game of the season. They play them all on the same day at all the same time. And that is indeed what's happening. They're playing at 4 o'clock tomorrow, so no football on a Saturday, which is basically how your next couple of months is going to be, because end of the season, no more league football. But the European Championships are just around the corner, so hopefully that can tie us over until the next season starts. I do enjoy there being a summer tournament to have, because of course, when you've got a situation whereby you can't watch any football for 2 months, it can be a little bit, if you're so ingrained in it, you desperately need kind of something. Now, there might be other competitions to look at. We've got the playoffs, you've got the Champions League final, but it is good to have kind of a little bit of football to just, tie you over, like a nicotine patch of football, basically. But I hope you're doing good and well, and we are going to go into the next few stories. There's a couple that are a bit concerning. There's a couple that are more open, but we're going to talk about them with you guys in the chat box, and of course we'll hopefully have time at the end of the show for a few questions as well. So let's kick off with this one. I could give a straight face. Cengiz Under from Leicester City, who is on loan from Roma this season. This is one of those stories where you just go, oh, for goodness sake, this is classic Arsenal transfer news. The thing that's going to make you turn off this video, please don't. Please don't. We will get to the good stuff. But yes, Arsenal have been linked with the Turkish international with a £17.2 million move. I think this is a load of rubbish, and I hope it is, because if it is true, what are we doing? Because this is the most classic Arsenal thing you've ever seen. Absolutely. This guy's played 9 Premier League games, not even starts, 9 Premier League games in total. I know he's had a couple of injury issues, but he's basically sat on Leicester's bench and been behind the likes of Mark Albrighton. Now, no offence to Mark Albrighton, but I wouldn't sign him for Arsenal either. And if he can't get in ahead of Mark Albrighton, he's had a great season for Leicester, which, by the way, they have an option to make that deal permanent. It's £22 million, which they aren't going to do. Why would they spend £22 million on him? And we want to close the gap between ourselves and those guys up there. Why would we sign this guy? Why would we do that? It makes absolutely no sense. So do not understand where this link came from, why it has happened, but it is a silly one. I don't think you should pay any attention to it whatsoever. I don't think you should pay any attention to it whatsoever so badly. I'm not even going to have a discussion about this one because it's pointless. I can see you guys in the chat box are effectively just saying no, and you're 100% right. No point. Not discussing this one. It's silly. But we always provide you with all the information. So, it's part of the job, I'm afraid. Anyway, let's move on to better things. Wilfried Zaha, of course, we know all about Wilfried Zaha. He's been linked with Arsenal a number of times previously. And whilst there's no direct link as of yet, there certainly could be in the next coming weeks or so, because of some comments that he has made recently, which basically have been like a come get me plea in the most blunt of senses possible. He says, I feel like I can have another shot at the top teams because my dream is to win things. I'm good enough to go out there and compete with the best. If the opportunity came, I wouldn't turn it down because I feel like I deserve it. It's so I can show my kids this is what daddy wants. Now, it's one thing saying you want to go and you want to play for a big club, and it's another thing actually happening. It is the most obvious come and get me plea. It's not exactly going to please the Crystal Palace fans too much, but he is very much someone that has been on Arsenal's radar before. We have bidded for him before. It's been rejected. I mean, Unai Emery even gave him a call and said, I want you. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come to Arsenal if you bid. But then the club couldn't get the money together for Palace and instead went for Nicolas Pepe, which we look at now as maybe we went for the wrong person. Who knows? The jury is still out on Pepe two seasons later. But anyway, I think it's certainly a player that will interest clubs. I don't think Arsenal are going to be one of them. He's got a couple of years left on his deal. I don't think Arsenal will be going in for him. You never know. Anything can happen. And if Willian goes, if Reece Nelson goes, and we need a forward player and say Buendia doesn't happen, then maybe the club will go in for him. But I just can't see this one happening from an Arsenal perspective. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Good morning, guys. Absolute legends always tuning in and being very polite, which is always much appreciated. Venkatesh says, not now. It's too late. The Real Janice says, no need for Wilfred. It would cost too much money. Matt G says he makes these comments every summer. He certainly does. Matthew says, well, we're not a top team, so Zaha's not coming to us, which is a very blunt way of responding to that, for sure. He always says, what about a swap deal with Willian's right foot? Paul says, need Zaha to fall off the radar. Ansgar says, no to Zaha. No to Zaha too. I want creative players and have a good pass on them as well. Gendry, thank you ever so much for the donation. He says, what was your best and worst moment this season? Best moment this season? Beating Spurs at home, obviously. Worst moment this season is probably Wolves, even more than Villarreal, the Wolves game, because I just look at the Wolves game and go, if that had been different, things may have been very, very different. And the Villarreal may have been very, very different if we'd have built up momentum. So there you go. But thank you ever so much for the donation, mate. Much appreciated. 24/7 Positive Wellbeing, which is a great name, says Zaha and Depay, Martinelli and Smith Rowe. To me, it is a good move. It's just about the money that's involved. Czech Burke says Zaha is more direct than most players we have, so I will give him that. And Nikhil says Zaha not needed. So there you go. There's the overriding thoughts on Wilfried Zaha. Let's go on to our next story, which revolves around Yves Bissouma. You may or may not have seen this. Big Fab, the big Romano, has said that basically he's not at the top of Arsenal's list. Arsenal are interested in Bissouma, but he is not the top of our list of targets in that position. You can imagine that Sander Berg is higher in the list than Bissouma, because supposedly we are looking at him, and some reports said we even bidded for the guy, but Sheffield United denied that. So, but the fact that Bissouma is not the top of Arsenal's list and that Berger seemingly is higher than that it does worry me a little bit. I think Berger's a great player, but that strikes me as a little bit of being a little bit cheap, because Berger's going to be available for less money, supposedly. So I'm worried about that. I'm cautious about the story because we are interested. It's just, and we don't know how many centre mids we're going to be going in for this summer. But I am a bit frustrated that he isn't at the top of Arsenal's list of centre midfield targets, because I think he is certainly someone that we should be looking at to bring in. I mean, you look at the interest from Liverpool and Man City in this guy, it's someone that the big clubs want, and we should be in that race to sign him as well. And if we aren't, or we aren't putting ourselves out there, I think that's a real big shame. But as I say, take it with a pinch of salt. But it's really frustrating that we aren't really pushing for this guy, and we aren't going to be maybe going in with the big. I mean, Dave says African Cup of Nations issues. It's true, but that is just 1 month, and I mean it might even be less than the 1 month, of course, in January. But I think I saw a few stories about it being moved, but I don't know if that's been confirmed yet. As far as I'm aware, it's taking place in January of next year. But I did see some rumours that they might move it to the summer, but I don't know. But even if they don't, I look at the situation and I go, it's 1 month. And maybe if you're going to sign two centre midfielders, this is one of the reasons why you could do that. And there's no reason why you couldn't bring someone on loan in January for 6 months just to deal with that situation. Or you promote from within. And if we're in the Conference League, then you might see the likes of Aziz getting a lot of minutes, and he can then step up into a position that we might need him. Or if we bring Willock back, he can play as a number 8 alongside, say, I don't know, a Sander Berg that we bring in. So or a Granit Xhaka, of course. But I don't think that's enough for me. That's the problem. Let's go to Pippo, who says Arsenal need to be decisive with Basuma, especially with the number of players we are losing from midfield, which is very, very true. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Sahil says, don't worry, Tom. We were told similar things during the Gabriel situation. We were going in for other centre-backs, apparently. Matthew DeSoto says, check Luis, William. The question is, which Chelsea player are we picking up this season? Is it going to be Tammy Abraham? I wouldn't want Tammy Abraham personally at all. But you never know. We might see another Chelsea player linked with the club. Mitchell says, you know what makes me worried about investment, Tom? It doesn't make sense to invest heavily in Arteta from a board perspective. If he has a terrible start, he is going to be sacked. It's the chance that you take, unfortunately. Drizzy says, hey, Tom, I'm going to rewind back to the beginning, but just wanted to say good morning. Keep up the great content. Thanks, mate. Much appreciated. Czech says, the last pod, the guys made a great part, which I agree with, a point, in which in kind of the midfield, we need to speed up more because we're too slow with our build-up player. Maybe if we bring in someone like a Buendia, that would help with that. I think that Partey can still be a big part of speeding up our play from midfield because he's good in the transition. But we do need someone who's going to be quicker than Xhaka in regards to how quickly he collects and then passes the ball. Tono says, Tom, do you think that they might target someone else that may not be Sanderberg? Yeah, of course. I think we've obviously been linked with Denis Zakaria. We've been linked with Guido Rodriguez from Betis. We've been linked with a number of players. There will be a list of players. There is not going to be like one guy, and if we don't get him, we're not going to go for anyone. There is going to be a list of players and different plans and scenarios that the club are going to be working on. So, yeah, 100%. Jorginho might be one, says Ansgar, which is ironic because I wouldn't have minded too much last summer bringing him in because I think he's a very decent player. Kevin says, why not Ruben Neves? I mean, Nuno is now leaving Wolves, and therefore there is probably going to be some movement. Players may want to move on because they were very kind of attached to him as a coach. I'm going to try and find out some information on Wolves, but I'm going to work on that today. But in regards to what this could mean, you could see Neves go, you could see some other players leave. It depends who they bring in. But I did think it was the right time for. I did think it was the right time for Nuno to go for sure. Gogo says transfers I will love Arsenal to do this summer: Ryan, Aarons, Duich, Basuma, Buendia, Daka, and we should get rid of Runnison, Cedric, Bellerin, Xhaka, Willock, and send Madrid players back like Odegaard and Sabas, Laka, Willian, and Aubameyang. It's a lot of business to be done. A lot of business. Jakub says, if we don't qualify for Europe, which we most likely won't, does it make sense to keep the roster small? We don't need a 25 players then. So the homegrown rule won't matter. You still need 25 players because you remember there's 2 cup competitions that are also very important, especially when you're not in Europe. You should be really fighting for those cup competitions. So it's not about keeping it as small as possible. But yes, I do agree that you don't necessarily need the amount of depth that you do when you're involved in 4 competitions in comparison to 3. But we don't know if we are going to be in a European competition yet because we've got to wait till tomorrow to find out what is going to happen. JD says Partey, Neuhaus, and Buendia should be our midfield trio going into next season. I mean, Neuhaus is an interesting one because obviously he plays more of an attacking sort of style in the midfield. Buendia and Neuhaus, I don't see us bringing in 2 attacking-minded midfielders, to be honest. I just don't see that happening. I think we'll go for 1 in that area, and we probably will end up going for maybe 2 in the more deeper midfield area rather than bringing in 2 attacking-minded ones. Andre says, Tom, do you know if Basuma is going to be going to the African Cup? He is going. Mali have qualified, so I imagine he is going, yes. Ashwin says, I don't want Arsenal to play in that conference. Ashwin, you are not the only one, sir. Dazza says, Tom, is all forgiven with the Cronkies if they sign Harry Kane? No, of course, mate. It's not. They're not forgiven at all. It needs to be. We've talked about this before. The Cronkies have to be forgiven over a long period of time, and they need to prove that for me. If they go over the next 5 seasons and they're investing and they're making good on all their promises, then I'll consider it after a good 5 years. But after a year or 2 of 1 or 2 good windows, it's not repaired that way. It's a long process. We've been neglected for all of these years. It doesn't just go away after 1 good summer window or 1 good transfer. No chance. Alfie says, it's gone off my screen. I absolutely cannot see us signing Basuma because that would mean 3 centre mids going to the African Cup of Nations. Partey, El Neni, and Basuma, of course, too. Again, it's just a month. I know it could be even less depending on how far they go through the competition. But I think you can bring in a loan, you can promote from within, and we're not in Europe, probably not in Europe, so that also will have a factor. But yeah, I wouldn't lean too much on that. Mysterious Billionaire says, I think Edu and Arteta want Aouar over Buendia. If we wanted Buendia, we could have done it last year. Also, Leon needs to offload this summer. No, they don't. They definitely want Buendia more than Aouar right now. He is at the top of their list of transfer targets. Aouar's gone a bit quiet on the interest front from Arsenal. I think after the season that he's had, they've gone a bit cold on him. But certainly, Buendia is above Aouar right now. Fane says, how much would Basuma cost? Upwards of £30 million. Paul Geyer says, I would like to see Basuma as a 6, Partey and Willock and Emile Smith-Rowe as the 8s, and our midfield next season. Thapello says, Tom, what do you make of Tchouaméni from Monaco? He looks like a great midfielder. He does. All I would say I have reservations about buying from Monaco sometimes because it's a real risk. You saw like Bakayoko leave there and go to Chelsea in the season that he had since. It wasn't great, but then you've got other players like obviously Mbappe. You've seen Lamar go to Atleti and a very kind of up and down. Mendy go to City and be a bit up and down. So I know you shouldn't. I know they're not all the same, and Tchouaméni is very highly rated, but I don't know. There's just a little bit of a reservation I have. It's probably completely unfounded right now, but it's just that history of those moves makes me question whether or not it's the right one. Let's go on to our next story. Emi Buendia. Now, Emi Buendia, of course, we've just been talking about briefly. There's an interesting story about Emi because of words from the kind of the guy up at Norwich, the Norwich sporting director. If you haven't seen the comments, he said, when asked about kind of possible transfers like Aarons and Buendia, he said, one of them may go, maybe 2 or all 3 of them will go. Who knows? But the facts are that this team isn't about 1 or 2 players. He says, for us to be successfully in the Premier League, it's going to be how does the squad of 20 do, not if one player performs brilliantly. When we sold James Maddison to Leicester, everyone thought it was the end of the world. And then a guy called Emi Buendia turned up. When Ben Godfrey left for Everton, it was the end of the world. And a guy called Ben Gibson turned up. And that's football. So that's good news for us because it obviously means that they are more open to us or anyone buying their main players. So that's a positive step. We know that Arsenal are very interested in Buendia. We know that they're probably going to be moving for the guy in the coming weeks that are going to be approaching before maybe he goes off to the Argentina squad. If that even happens, I don't know if you're aware of the situation in Argentina right now, but it's not great. Football's been completely banned over there for the moment because the situation of the pandemic is so bad. So regarding Buendia, it could be an opportunity where Arsenal can get this deal done fairly quickly. Speaking of which, let's talk about Arteta's comments. Let's go to this one and we'll go back to Bertrand. So Arteta said, it would be it would be ideal to do everything as early as possible and have all the players who know they will continue here on the first day of pre-season, but it's not going to happen. We have the Euros and everything is going to be delayed. There are many things to be done that will take time, but we know how key it will be. And what we don't want to happen is what happened last year. So obviously last year, everything was left to the last few minutes with Thomas Partey. They want to get things done very quickly. I think they'll try and get some stuff done before the Euros. But as I have said over the last week or so, that is not going to be possible because some dominoes won't fall until after the Euros are finished or during the Euros are going on. It's very difficult. Now, there are some players that aren't involved in summer tournaments, which makes those types of deals happen. Just because the Euros are on doesn't mean that negotiations and discussions stop. It's not like that. But it does make it trickier for players that are at the European Championships. Of course, it's a very busy time during those summer tournaments. So it's a good thing that Arteta said this. It also kind of undermines those comments about everyone who's on a contract is going to be here next season because we know that was rubbish. It was just one of those comments that he says that don't necessarily mean anything. So I think this is a good thing. It shows that we're trying to learn, but at the end of the day, actions speak a lot louder than words, and we need more than just assurances that there's going to be issues with trying to get things done early on, and they want to get stuff different this year, and they've got a lot to do. That's great, but I want to see actual things happening. That's going to be the problem with us this season, is because we need more than just verbal assurances like we always get as Arsenal fans. That is one of the most frustrating things right now. Let's go up. Let's go up and get some more of those comments. What about Pedro Goncalves? Says Nikhil from Sporting. I love Pedro Goncalves. I mean, I wrote a really long, in-depth player profile on this guy with some insight from Paul, with Tom Kunda. If you want to read that, if you just go into Google and type Pedro Goncalves 101 player profile, it will come up. You can find it. You can learn all about him with some tactical graphics and stuff and some expert insight. It's basically like a written tactical breakdown of the guy. But yeah, he's really exciting. He used to be at Wolves Academy. He's been to Spain. He went back to Portugal, for he came from like Braga and is now at Sporting. He's helped them win the league this season, first league title since early 2000s. In fact, Sporting's first title came the year before Cristiano Ronaldo made his debut in the senior side. So, and Pedro looks like to be the next generation in terms of taking that that kind of title area. I'm hoping to have an interview at 101 with one of their players, so I'm going to ask about Pedro and see what the lay of the land is there. Fingers crossed that happens soon. But yeah, he's a brilliant player, and I do look forward to seeing where and how he develops and where he goes in the summer. Czech says, for the love of God, please do our business early. We have always left it late, which costs us more often. Not getting our first choice is an absolute must. And we do have to get our first choices, which at the moment seem to be Buendia and Sanderberg right now. Shay says, is there any info on Manor Solomon? Absolutely nothing, mate. It's gone very quiet since any of the January links. So no, nothing on him so far whatsoever. Thapello says, I'm not sure if you know about him, but what do you know of Devon Renge from Ajax? Looks like a good young right back. I don't know a lot about him. I know his existence, and that's about it. But no, I don't know anything. He's very young. But that's literally that's all I know. So no, sorry, mate, nothing. And we haven't been linked to him at all. There's been no shouts about him whatsoever. Stephen Andrews says, Tom, you know we won't announce any signings until at least a month into the window. They have to shoot behind the scenes videos for all of them. They do. If you remember the amount of leaks that come out, do you remember the whole thing when we were doing the investigation for Aubameyang signing because it looked like Mkhitaryan was saying his name and it turned out he was, which was hilarious. Absolutely fantastic bit of it, like detective work by the Arsenal fan base for sure. And Mick Lucas says, morning, Tom. New to your show. Just think every season we get promises of good transfer windows only to be disappointed. Mick, you are not alone, son. First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. But yeah, we're in a situation that we find ourselves in every summer at the start, completely unknown, full of promises, full of optimism, and, you know, could be let down. But this is a different summer to the others for me because it's the first summer that we've really, in my mind, heard about plans for investment, Arteta saying certain things, and it's different because it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be different when they actually come to the fore. It's different because we've got something tangible to go back to and say, look, what the hell? You said this. This not happened. What the hell's going on? So that for me is the difference for that. Let me just go quickly onto the Bertrand story, and then we'll have 5 minutes of questions. So Bertrand, obviously this is a bit annoying from my perspective because I was quite interested in seeing Bertrand come to Arsenal on a free transfer. I thought it was a savvy bit of business to back up Kieran Tierney. Doesn't look like that's going to happen now. Leicester have taken a very strong march over us in the negotiations. He looks very much likely that he's going to go and lean towards that side of things. I hope that this turns out to be wrong. But this is the route that it sounds like is happening right now, that he sees more opportunities at Leicester. He hasn't got Tierney in the way like he does at Arsenal. There are bigger opportunities to play at Leicester because they've only got the youngsters like Thomas in the way. And he feels like he can get more minutes there over a couple of seasons and play in Europe as well, which is something that he wants to do. So it looks very much like the Bertrand thing for Arsenal is done, and he's going to be going to Leicester. And if you ever wanted any kind of indication about where Arsenal are in terms of stature in the league in comparison to a club like Leicester, this is one of the biggest signs that you'll ever see of that. So there's that. Anyway, we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to open the floor up to some of your questions. Yakub says, Tom, what do you think of Rodrigo de Paul? I think he would cost a lot of money. I like his technical ability. I think he's got leadership skills as well, having spoken to some players at Udinese and what they say about Rodrigo de Paul. They say he's basically, the young guys anyway, say he's absolutely great with them in the dressing room, helps them out a lot. But I think he would cost a lot of money, and I think that the Buendia is probably a better option for me. Insane Lit says, if we fail to get Buendia, we should go out and sign Hakan Çalhanoğlu from AC Milan. He is on a free at the end of the season. He is demanding 85 grand a week, where Milan at the moment can't agree with his demands, and he's 27 years old. We were linked to him last summer for a period of time. Nothing transpired, but yeah, we were linked with Hakan Çalhanoğlu, but I don't know if he'd be that. I don't know how effective he'd be in the Premier League. I've only seen him in Serie A and the Bundesliga for Hamburg, and by Leverkusen, of course. And I don't really know if he would transition into the Premier League well. He's very two-footed. He's great at set pieces. I mean, if you haven't seen the long shot he scored for Hamburg, absolutely unreal a fair few years ago. But yeah, maybe it would be a decent sort of savvy piece of business, considering he doesn't cost any money because he's on a free transfer. I don't know how close they were to agreeing a new contract, but yeah. 24/7 Positive Wellbeing, thank you ever so much for the donation, mate. It says, great show, Tom. If only we had 100 million transfers, who would you buy, sell and loan? Wow, that's a big question. I mean, we've kind of talked about this. I've done a few shows where I've said who I would sell and buy. There's a lot of sells, so I'll keep it short and I'll go straight to the buys. If I had 100 million to spend, Buendia for 40. I'd go for Basuma for 30 if I'm being lucky. So I've already spent 70 odd million, and I'd go for Max Aarons for 30, and I get Bertrand on a free. So there's 4 key players. I think 3 of them come straight into I get Matt Ryan on a free as well. I know he's got a year left on his deal, but I think we can sweeten something with them. So there's 5 players, 100 million quid. Ryan, Bertrand, Aarons, Basuma, Buendia. I think you might be a bit lucky getting them for 100 million. You'd need some of the sales, but there you go. There's a very quick response. Josiah says, Tom, do you think we'll be hampered by trying to sell first before we can buy? We have to, mate. The squad is way too big. We have to sell before we buy. We have to move players on. We still could try and buy players, but it's risky knowing that you've got such a big squad already. We need to be moving players on as quickly as possible. And that the factor of the Euros being there is what makes this so difficult to do, and why it's going to take a while before you probably see some players coming in, because we do need to sell the players first. Tim Jallo says, Tom, curious of your thoughts of signing players before the Euros. Besides a potential long-term injury, shouldn't players be assessed enough already to not have 4 to 5 games change the evaluation? Tim, you're spot on, mate, and that's why we've talked a little bit about kind of the domino effect and how you have to wait sometimes for them to fall. Part of that is, as you say, assessing players throughout the Euros. But the thing is when you look at players' kind of injury records, we know from the Thomas Partey situation that it doesn't matter if you sign a player that's never been injured before, they can get injured. Injuries are so random about when they can happen. It's very hard to predict, and it's very hard to factor in to a transfer. Only when there's been a significant history of injuries throughout a player's career, like Aaron Ramsey or Jack Wilshere, do you make certain assumptions about players. Other than that, it's very difficult. I'd still look to sign players early and get business done, especially ones like Buendia that aren't playing at the European Championships. So that is certainly one that you think about. I know that there's the Copa Libertadores or Copa America, whatever's going on in South America, and of course that will affect things, but that might not happen because of the situation with the pandemic in South America right now. Josh Hunter says, how many players will... Oh, it's missed it. Here we go. How many players will we sign in each position, realistically? I think we'll sign 1 keeper, 1 left back, 1 right back, 1 centre midfielder, 1 attacking midfielder, maybe another midfielder. So 3 midfielders, if you're not being smart about the specifics of where those positions are. Probably maybe 3 mids, 2 or 3 mids. If we're lucky 3, but minimum 2 mids, 2 defenders, 1 goalkeeper. I think that's what we'll do this summer. I think we'll promote from within a little bit as well from the youth system. But my guess would be 5. I'm going for 5 ins of like the senior squad. We'll return to this, and you can remind me that I said 5. So we'll see. I think that's on the optimistic end of the scale still, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Let's have a look at what we've got. Questions coming in. Jacob says we should get an experienced left back to back up Tierney. Have any of you heard of Monreal from Real Sociedad? No, I haven't. Who is this guy? He's doing very well at Real Sociedad. I hope he stays there. He's won the cup there now. He won the Copa del Rey, which is fantastic for him. And I loved Monreal. He was a great player. Really enjoyed him when he was at Arsenal. The real Janice says, are you actually looking forward or dreading the summer? I love the summer window, mate. So I'm looking forward to it because it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. It's full of hyperbolic people. And I love the just the madness of it all. So yeah, I am looking forward to it. Abdi says, would you like to see Emerson come in? I would, but I think I'd prefer Max Aarons at the moment. So it goes Aarons and then Emerson for me. Czech says, how do you read questions so fast? Just, it's teacher vibes of constantly being asked questions all day, every single day for the last 4 or 5 years. Thank God I don't do that anymore. The Bello says, thoughts on Adam Hlojek, the Sparta Prague youngster, and Dusan Vlahovic, the Fiorentina striker. Adam Hlojek, of course, we've done a tactical breakdown on him. He is very highly rated. He is untested, but seems to be a great player. West Ham were linked with him quite a lot. Dusan Vlahovic, I have not seen any of this season. I hear that he's very good, but he's very young, and Fiorentina want a hell of a lot of money for him. So I'm not sure if that's one that we're going to be looking for. Jacob says, Monreal is an unreal signing. Most underrated player that we've had in years. Palace fan says, really disappointed. Was at the game on Wednesday, but Pepe was class. Fair play. Thanks, mate. Much appreciate the humbleness you've shown, the humility. Manu Clerk says, 3 midfielders. We've got Guendouzi, Torreira, and Willock on the books. So you think they will be sold? I think Guendouzi and Torreira are going, mate. I think Willock may stay. But arguably all 3 of them could go, yes. Keshav says, well, why we play safe passes and we create only few chances? Because we need a little bit more risk in the forward line. We're very, very safe at the moment. Noel says, Odegaard and Buendia are needed, not just one. Wenger used to be criticised for having one too many of these creative types, but seeing what we've kind of seeing now, he was right back then about having more kind of creative players in the team. Maybe so. David says, what are your thoughts about using Saliba as a defensive midfielder? I don't have any thoughts on that, David, I'm afraid, because he's never played that position. I don't think I'd risk that. No, I'm playing him next season at centre-back. That's where I'm playing him. Jack Grealish would be amazing, says Farid. Of course he would, but I don't think that's a realistic option for Arsenal right now. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. There might be a show this afternoon. It depends if there's any big news that drops, and we might do a preview for the last game of the season as well. I'm not 100% sure on that's going to happen yet, but we'll see. But that's been the show for today. Make sure you tune in every single day at 8 a.m. In the mornings as we cover all the latest Arsenal transfer news. Keep you guys up to date with that. We're hopefully going to be putting out some tactical breakdowns next week on Sander Berger and anyone else that we get linked to as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single piece of content. We will be back very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.